Warning, slight gore. Ever since the crown had landed on his head, Bakugou had received disapproving looks from everyone because of his ways of ruling. Then they would give him a look of anger to press it further to him that what he was doing is not ideal, and they're the opposite of it. But in the end, whether Bakugou would show them the power of he held as king, they would always cover in fear. That's how it always ended. But Yin, she was so different. Bakugou knows, sooner or later, that fury in her eyes would diminish, only replaced by fear. He had shown his power to her. What he's capable of doing. He sent her to the woods to give her a fright, to show her that he can have her killed any time if he wants, if she continues to disobey, to show her proper place even if the title of Queen Consort was bestowed upon her. Yet, the fury in her is still there. Why is she not afraid? She should have realized it was Bakugou who put her in danger. She should be kneeling, crying and begging for him to never give her a fright again. She would be begging for the safety of her life. Irritated, Bakugou thought. Yin is irritating. Where is he? He watched as she noticed Kirishima first. Her angry face was red and ready to blow off. She's looking around, and when her eyes finally landed on Bakugou, she glared. She started to walk to him, dragging the coachman responsible for leaving her in the middle of the woods. He struggled and cried in her grip. It wasn't me, Your Majesty, the coachman cried. Yin did not listen and continued to walk to Bakugou, and then she stopped before him. This man right here planned to kill me, she said, panting. This is treason! He had seen her mad before, but not this mad. The coachman thrashed away from her grip. He succeeded and scrambled a few distance away from her. Then he kneeled and lowered his head, almost kissing the ground. I swear to you, Your Majesty, I do not intend to kill you. I was forced to do it. Forgive me. Forgive me. Bakugou looked down at the coachman. Yin looked down as well, with disbelief. Who was it? She asked. Who ordered you? The coachman remained silent and trembling. Yin stepped closer to the coachman. Tell me, she said, almost pleading. Bakugou closed his eyes and sighed. He decided not to prolong this longer. It was me, his voice responded. Silence enveloped the whole throne room. Bakugou saw Kirishima look down while gritting his teeth. Midoriya winded his eyes, while the coachman flinched. It was a given reaction. And Yin? She froze. Slowly, she turned her head to face him, but refused to meet his eyes. What? She asked, voice breaking. It was me who ordered him. Her torso went up and down as she breathed shakily. Why? Why? He thought, brows creasing in irritation. He knew Yin was suspicious, that it was him who ordered the coachman. Yet why is she acting like she doesn't? Is she in denial? Had she decided to turn a blind eye against his doing? It irritated Bakugou. It irked him that this woman, his wife, chose to act innocent and oblivious to his actions. Ever since she got here, he knew that he hadn't treated her right, and Bakugou didn't care for her feelings. Yet she continued to stick with him. Is she brave to stand up to him? Or just plain stupid? Bakugou couldn't understand. He hates that he couldn't predict her. Don't act stupid, he glared. You knew it was me, and you know why I had to do it. Why? She repeated. You ignored my protocol and defied me. You humiliated me in front of those extras, and I have to make sure you know your place here. Yin opened her mouth in disbelief. Then she scoffed. Are you saying you tried to kill me because your little ego was hurt? I'm telling you not to fuck with me again. Just because we're tied down by marriage and everyone thinks you're my equal doesn't mean you can do anything you fucking want. I am the king here, and you're nothing but an outsider. You can never be my equal. I nearly died back there. She raised her voice, her finger pointing at the direction where she had came from. Yin suspected it was him. She didn't want to believe it at first, but then the truth came from his own mouth. She hadn't expected he would go so far, but she now believes that Bakugou is capable of doing much worse things. She actually thought that her whole being is secured because she is queen consort, his wife, and the one standing for him whenever he's absent. Yin thought wrong. She's naive to think that. Yin is on the verge of tears and on the verge of bursting out in anger. Bakugou just stood there, authoritatively and staring at her with hateful eyes. But you didn't, he stated. I did it not to kill you. It was merely to teach you that what would happen if you crossed me again. Next time, I won't be so forgiving. Yin pursed her trembling lips. She shook her head and started backing away a few steps. You're so cruel. I heard that many times before. I wasn't wrong. I did the right thing by helping those who were struggling because you refused to aid them. Yin had noticed, but she's clenching her fist so tight that her own hand started to flicker red. And if you hadn't insulted my family, I wouldn't have slapped you. I'm willing to forgive you for it. But you have gone way too far by trying to kill me. Bakugou sighed and spinashly. You're so goddamn stubborn. I'm not gonna argue with you anymore. My head fucking hurts. Hey, shitty hair. Get the guards and tell them to get her out of here. Yin froze while Kirishima, who had been watching quietly along with Midoriya, jumped and looked lost. Bakugou, just call the fucking guards. Kirishima looked at Yin, and she could see he's hesitant. But Kirishima had no choice and went to get the guards. Not a second later, they appeared with Kirishima and started to walk to Yin. The woman turned to Bakugou once more. We're not done talking. She stepped up to him. I'm not going to let you. Get her out of here. Bakugou cut her off as he ordered the guards. They were quick to comply, and both of them grabbed Yin's arms. She struggled while they started to drag her. Let me go of this instant, she shouted, her hands glowing red. Bakugou hadn't noticed. And pack your things. Yin stopped struggling when he said this. The guards halted too. You're going home, and I'll have your parents fix you. That added more fuel to your anger. Yin shoved the guard on her left while the other kept a hold on her. That doesn't matter because Yin managed to step forward and freed herself. When the guard reached her hand to her, Yin grabbed his arm and stopped it. I don't need to be fixed. Her voice boomed all over the room, and in her rage, she did not realize that her hands glowed red and her quirk activated. It only dawned on her when the guard started screaming. Bakugou watched the damage she had done. He watched as her glare vanished, then turned into fear as she looked at the guard, who now was half of his arm destroyed into pieces. His blood poured all over the floor. The guard screamed. It was deafening. Bakugou flinched. Yin knelt and hovered her hand on the wounded arm of the soldier. She then started crying while screaming apologies. I'm sorry. Bakugou laughed in disbelief. Fucking woman. Yin continued to cry and finally placed her hand gently on the guard's arm, her hand glowing red. Slowly the guard's arm started to form back again. His screams died down, but he's still crying in pain and heavily breathing. Yin was in so much guilt and couldn't believe what she had just did. She remained on the ground while repeating apologies over and over again. It didn't help that the guard looked at her fearfully. Then she heard Bakugou click his tongue. She looked up with tears in her eyes. The man stared down at her, so coldly. You're a fucking mess. Yin suddenly found herself unable to talk as her lips trembled. Bakugou motioned for the other guard. Get her out of here. Then he turned to a shocked Midoriya. You get your ass out too, Deku. Midoriya gulped. He then walked over to Yin. When he placed an arm on her shoulder, he felt her shaking so poorly. Your Majesty, let's go, he whispered softly. Yin let Midoriya pull her up. The other guard joined and grabbed the other arm. They started leading her out, and Yin didn't struggle anymore. Bakugou turned to see them going out. He glared at the back of her head until he couldn't see her anymore. Then they were gone. Bakugou clenched his fist and kicked the table. Get the fuck out! He pointed at the injured guard, who immediately scrambled up. Frustrated and mad, he ran a hand on his face. Then he noticed Kirishima still remained in the room. Bakugou, Don't talk to me, Kirishima, he snapped. Leave me alone. When the red male didn't move, Bakugou glared at him. Now! Sighing, Kirishima walked out intently. Once he was gone, Bakugou grabbed a glass from the table and snatched a bottle of Scott. He poured a good amount on his glass and immediately finished it in one. Bakugou spent the rest of his night drinking away his frustrations. Have you heard what happened to Her Majesty? Yes, poor thing must have been badly shaken. As Cammy pranced around the court, she knows something has occurred. But of course, the court would never run out of silly things or rumors to talk about. She also knows that the innocent relating to the queen was the topic. Apparently, Cammy was told that 2 days earlier the queen was invited on an evening mass. And on her way home, the queen got kidnapped. Everyone was shocked when they heard the news. Kirishima had reassured everyone that the queen is now fine and is resting in her chambers. Nothing was heard from the king, though. That's when Cammy thought there's something going on more than that. She had never seen Yin go out of her room and never saw her with Bakugou either. And Lady Cammy got a bit of a word from the guard that a fight occurred between the married couple. But no one was talking about that. Only Lady Cammy knew. And she also knew that Yin had fucked up. Cammy wasn't surprised. Yin had done things that was so spiteful to Bakugou. And Cammy knew Bakugou wasn't the kind of man who would let anyone step on him so easily. So stupid. She laughed quietly to herself as she thought of Yin. As Cammy turned to go to the other hall, she saw a crowd forming by the entrance of the palace. She stopped and narrowed her eyes. When a servant passed with a suitcase in hand, she stopped him. What's going on? The servant bowed before answering. Her Majesty is going back to Magnius for a vacation, Lady Cami. Cami raised a brow. Then she dismissed the servant. Walking to the crowd, she stopped behind them and coughed. The other nobles turned to her, and they smiled. They also parted a little to let her pass. When Cami got into the front, she saw her friends. So, one of her friends, Lady Yuri, smiled as she got beside her. The outsider's finally going back to where she belongs. Finally, Cami agrees. There, they watched Yin don a red dress as she stood in front of her carriage. She was staring at the palace with an expression Cami never saw on her face. Look at her. She looks traumatized. Yes, I heard she's going back to Magnius to recover. Good for her, then. Cami breathed and stiffened her posture. Yin then noticed them, and the court people immediately smiled. Lady Cami chose not to. Yin didn't smile. She merely lowered her head and turned to her servant, Uraka. The court people started to whisper again. Where is the king? Who knows? Is he not going to see her off? Lady Cami closed her eyes and sighed. No, I don't think so. We'll be done soon, Your Majesty. Yin turned to the servant who bowed. She shook her head. It's all right. There's no need to rush. The servant bowed once again, and Yin watched as he helped the other put her cases on the carriage. She turned and met Uraka's eyes. The servant immediately smiled. Yin curved her mouth slightly. She then moved her head to stare up at the palace. The sun blinded her, so she had to squint to take in all its incompetent detail carved on the exterior of the palace. When her vision had adjusted, she looked around, admiring the view of the palace. When her eyes landed on the balcony, she was met with the figure of Bakugou looking down. He caught her looking. Then he slowly backed away and disappeared. Yin then teared her gaze away from the balcony, and when she looked down, she saw the crowd of court people by the entrance, all looking at her. Yin bowed her head, then turned to Uraka. Your Majesty? You can call me by my name, Uraka, Yin said softly. The servant nodded and sadly smiled. Are you ready to go? Yin nodded sadly and grabbed Uraka's hand. It won't be long. I'll be back as soon as I get better. Although she was meant to reassure Uraka, her soul voice betrayed her. Yes, please take care and take lots of rest, Yin. I will. Yin was told by Midoriya that Bakugou does not plan of telling anyone of what happened, aside from the witnesses from last night, of course. The guards were also sworn to secrecy. They needed an excuse when she got back to Igneous, so they told everyone in court that she was kidnapped on her way back to the palace after the mass, and that she wants to go home to take some rest. What a bunch of bullshit. It was sickening, Yin. But at this point, she's too tired to argue anymore. We're ready to go, Your Majesty. Yin nodded, then forced herself to smile. She looked at Uraka and got distracted when Midoriya appeared behind the servant. She gave a nod to Midoriya, and the green-haired scholar smiled. He then bowed. Take care, Uraka whispered. Yin couldn't take it and immediately embraced her. Uraka returned the hug, and for a while, Yin felt peace again. Right. Yin smiled as they broke apart. I should go now. Uraka then curtsied. Yin was led to her carriage. The servant opened the door for her, but before she could even climb inside, she took one last look up at the balcony. Bakugou wasn't there, but Yin found herself glancing at where he stood before. Yin then boarded the carriage, and not a moment later, the carriage started moving. Yin moved to the window to look back at the palace. She then looked at Midoriya and Uraka. Even though she's not sure if they could see her, she waved. Honestly, Yin doesn't know how long she'll be staying at Magnius. She doesn't know when Bakugou will plan to take her back to Igneous. Maybe he won't bring her at all. In the silence of her carriage, that she solely accompanied, she whispered, "Goodbye."